and they were actually quite popular for mobile GIS because they were kind of an inexpensive platform. For $300 you'd get a consumer type of handheld that could run Windows Pocket PC and then onto Windows Mobile. That could run ArcPad and other apps out there, interface to your GPS receiver and that sort of thing. But again, those have really evaporated since the same functionality is on smartphones. I mean, I think there's still some limitations to smartphones. Some smartphones don't support Bluetooth serial port profile, so you can't interface to an external Bluetooth receiver outside of the phone. That's sort of a big limitation. But I think you're going to get there. I think it's just probably a matter of time. And then the last bullet point there, industrial handhelds have sort of gained momentum. If you look at, 4 years ago, there was sort of all that was out there for industrial handhelds were these sort of really high-end, $1,500 up to $3,000, waterproof, somewhat smaller displayed kind of units. But you look over in the past, 6 months, maybe even 9 months to a year, there's been probably 3 or 4 new product introductions from companies that have really got, 3.5, 3.7-inch displays, really vivid color outdoor screens, semi-rugged or even waterproof in some cases, long battery life, 15 hours sort of thing for $1,000 or even a little under $1,000. And so I think you've seen really an increase in technology and a decrease in price in those areas, sort of following Moore's law. And it wasn't like that for the longest time. And I've got a picture I just displayed on the screen of some of these mobile devices that have come out. And it seemed like it was static for such a long time. From 2000 to maybe 2010. You had sort of the same suppliers out there, same manufacturers making the same stuff. It really wasn't much, there were some operating system upgrades and some, increased CPU horsepower and that sort of thing. But it was relatively static. I don't know if you agree with me on that, Craig, but I just think, there's been sort of somewhat of a major shift in the last couple of years or even the last year for industrial handhelds. It just seems like there's so many more choices out there at a much better price point.
Absolutely, I agree, and I think part of it is Windows Mobile expanding some of the screen sizes and resolution form factors that they supported, so that allowed some of the manufacturers to be a little more creative and start to have different shaped screens, larger screens, thinner tablets, stuff like that wasn't available in earlier versions of Windows Mobile.
So what I'd like to do now is have the first poll question, and it's related to which type of mobile device you prefer. And so what I'll do is we'll sort of talk here for a second, give you a chance to click on one of these. I think you can just pick one. And I'm sort of a depends on the project guy. I've got a smartphone, I've got an industrial handheld, I've got a tablet, I've got a notebook computer, and it really depends on what I'm trying to do. I guess my default go-to would be an industrial handheld, and I don't know if that's because I'm just a legacy guy or what, and that's what I'm used to. But if I'm out on a four-wheeler or out in sort of inclement weather, and I don't need to see a lot of background data like an aerial photo or something like that, then I'll take a waterproof handheld out there that I can just sort of slap around and stick in my pocket, hit a few buttons, record some data. So I'd say probably for me, 75% of the stuff I would do in the field, I would use an industrial handheld. And then other than that, I would go to a tablet if I need to have a nice aerial photo in the background, or maybe a CAD drawing or some other GIS layers in the background. Those two pretty much cover most of my applications. And I haven't really gone to a smartphone yet, just because I have some, I don't know, maybe it's a emotional barrier or something, but I have a problem with using the device that I talk to people with as a data collection device also. I don't know, I feel it's kind of fragile. Maybe it'll crash on me or something, because my phone, it crashes probably once a week or so. It seems like I'm going to have to reset it. I don't know, I just don't have the confidence in it that maybe someone else would. And I don't know, Craig, do you have the same kind of feeling, or do you have a different feeling than that?
Well, it's not as much of a confidence thing for me. For me, it's more of the environment that I tend to go out in. So I tend to, most of my projects that I work on tend to involve natural resources. So I'm out in a river, or I'm out in the forest. I'm out in an environment where, you know, I can't drop the device. It's not an option if it, you know, unless it's rugged, or the sun's beating on me. Unless it's a device that's built with an outdoor display, I simply can't see it. Or I'm out there all day and I have a lot of equipment, so I want something small I can clip to my side or put in my pocket, and the batteries are going to last me all day. And so, you know, based on those factors, I tend to lend itself towards the industrial handheld, or sometimes a rugged tablet.
Okay, Matt, can you display the results of the poll out there? I'd be interested to see what people think. Yeah, it sort of matches up to what I'm thinking too. Yeah, me, it depends on the project guy, but yeah, my go-to is the industrial handheld. Interesting. It really is fascinating to me to see how smartphones are sort of going to make their way into this space. There's so much talk about smartphones, but I don't see a lot of traction yet. I don't know, Craig, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, you know, our industry, you know, the mobile GIS industry and field GPS and GIS data collection, to me, and you know, maybe to you as well, it's my whole world. That's where I live in. And so sometimes I need to step back and realize that we're such a small niche market that, you know, the larger market of smartphones and what people are doing with smartphones just completely dwarfs our needs. So, you know, that I think is a part of it, is that there aren't a lot of manufacturers really looking at, you know, at our industry as a target for their devices. You know, they might sell 0.1% of devices into our industry. So even though, while for me, you know, and for a lot of us, it's our whole world, for the overall market, it's a much, much smaller slice.
Yeah, you know, I guess some trends about mobile devices are, you know, smartphones are becoming more prevalent and powerful. So it's sort of teasing people into thinking, hey, maybe we can use it for these mobile GIS apps, and you can certainly. And again, we mentioned this before, but you know, the consumer PDAs have sort of been replaced by smartphones. But there is a market for rugged industrial handhelds that has grown, and so especially as they become cheaper. And then again, as I mentioned, the tablet computers have increased in availability and certainly variety. You get a whole different, you know, spectrum of screen sizes from, you know, I know Juniper Systems has a Mesa with, I think it's a 7-inch screen, and I think they don't even call it a tablet, they call it a notepad, and you can go all the way up to 10-inch or even bigger screens. And all these items have become, for the most part, less expensive. So this is an interesting subject, and Craig and I have had some discussions on this before, and I've talked to some other people about it, but I end up calling this the mobile device operating system wars. And it really affects mobile GIS, certainly, because it affects, you know, apps that are available and decisions on hardware to buy for your applications. But we've seen a big shift. I mean, like I said, you know, probably from 2000 to 2010, you know, no one ever questioned what sort of operating system you would have on a mobile GIS device. It was Windows used to be the de facto standard, and there was really no reasonable alternative. And all the software developers developed apps for Windows environment, and so it was just sort of a done deal. It made it easy. There was no ambiguity. But iOS and you know, the Apple operating system on the iPhone and the iPad and Google's Android operating system have really changed that. And you know, Android operating system is significantly outselling iOS and Windows on mobile phones, and you're starting to see Android creep into tablets and industrial handheld type devices too. And Microsoft has sort of shot themselves in the foot with their Windows Mobile strategy, because they confuse user community, they confuse developers on which direction they want to go. And after you sort of of look into it a bit, it seems clear what their strategy is, but they really haven't communicated it that well to the user community. And here's I'll give you a chance to pipe in a sec here, Craig. And I don't know how well this shows up to you on your screen, but this sort of, what I wanted to show here was, this is mobile operating system shipped on phones over the past couple of years. And so you see how much Android, back in Q1 2011, 36.7% of smartphones were shipped with Android. I'm sorry, 36.1. And now in first quarter, just a year later, first quarter 2012, 59% of all smartphones were shipped with Android. iOS showed an increase also, 18.3% in 2011 Q1, 23% in Q1 2012. And then you see who's been taking a hit. The Symbian operating system, which is Nokia's thing, from 26% down to basically 7%. And then BlackBerries have taken a big hit too, down 30% year over year with the same quarters. And then you look down at the bottom and you have Windows Phone and Windows Mobile having this minuscule kind of market share. And again, this is for smartphones, this minuscule market share. So you see definitely where the trends on smartphones are heading. So why do we care about which operating system is running on a mobile device? I don't know, Craig, maybe you can chime into the point you were trying to make before, and we can tackle that.
Yeah, actually, if you go back a slide, actually, looking at how you were saying about the Windows Mobile strategy being confusing to users, and developers, it seems like it's even confusing to analysts, because if you look at this data, it says Windows Phone 7 and Windows Mobile grouped together. So if I'm looking at this as a technical director of a small company and a developer, and I say, hey, that's the platform we want to go for. But the reality is those are two completely different platforms for development and deployment, and even the analysts seem to group them together. So Microsoft's strategy really is confusing to everybody. I think.
I've got a slide on that specifically here in a second that sort of explains Windows strategy. So the point I wanted to make here is, why do we care about which operating system our mobile device is running? Well, it determines which GIS software platform we can use, and then it determines which GIS software apps that we can use. And so it's really vital to understand, where the trends are with operating systems. So if you're an organization that wants to buy, 150 mobile device units, and you don't want to buy something, let's say, that was Palm OS based, 7 years ago, when the trend was trending away from Palm OS. So the question still is, hey, and I get this question a lot from folks. They ask me, hey, which mobile device to buy and which operating system should it run? And I'll answer that, or I'll try to sort of comment on it a little bit in a minute. But I wanted to make sure we touch on, what's the story with Windows Mobile? Because I get this question a lot from people. I just had an email, yesterday about this. They were really confused by Microsoft's strategy, and I think I have a pretty clear idea of what they're doing, as much as I can as an outsider. Because a lot of folks think that Windows Mobile is going away. It's like they've discontinued it. They're not going to support it anymore, and it's just going to sort of wither away. But it's really not the case. And Craig, you can correct me on some of the stuff or comment as I go through this. So Windows is not supporting new devices with Windows Mobile 6.5. Okay. So if you went in today with, say, I'm X manufacturer, I've got a handheld device or a phone or whatever, and I want to put Windows Mobile 6.5 on it, which is the current, a lot of units are shipping today with that operating system. Microsoft would say, hey, we're not supporting new devices. But there is a next generation, sort of the follow-on to Windows Mobile 6.5, called Windows Embedded Handheld. And I think it's also 6.5.3, I think, is the current version. And it runs the same application software as Windows Mobile 6.5. And I think it essentially looks the same as Windows Mobile 6.5.
It does. And to a developer, it's transparent when you're building. You're not thinking about, am I deploying to Windows Embedded Handheld or Windows Mobile? It's basically the same thing from the developer perspective.
So it doesn't matter. So just I think what's confusing people is that the Windows Mobile the name is going away, but it's called something different now, and maybe have some different features in there too. But the bottom line is that you can run ArcPad on Windows Mobile, or any other, or Digiterra, or the CMT stuff, or Survey, those kind of applications built for Windows Mobile 6.5 are going to also run on this new Windows embedded handheld 6.5.3 operating system. Now, and what's different here and what's confusing about this is that smartphones, they're not going to run Windows embedded handheld. They're going to run Windows Phone 7 and Windows Phone 8.